What I'm going to show you today is the most comprehensive list of Wonderkids in Football Manager. Down in the description is a shortlist download. On screen here is 160 of the best young players in Football Manager, available for a variety of prices from the very expensive Jude Bellingham all the way to the least valued player, a player who featured in my top 10 Wonderkids video, Esteval. For those of you that love Wonderkids, this is the video for you. This is the shortlist for you. Let's run the intro. We got quite a lot to cover today. So first things first, if you do want to get this shortlist, you're going to want to go down in the description, download it, and then once you're in Football Manager, come to your shortlist tab, come to this little cog drop down, and then hit import shortlist. You just then need to navigate to your downloads folder, and you'll be able to load it in game. Now, naturally, for this video, there's 160 players. I'm not going to be able to cover all of them today, but we're going to go by position. I'm going to highlight some of the players that I think are the best, and hopefully give you some potential targets to pick up, starting with goalkeepers. Now, when it comes to goalkeepers, there's not a massive selection of Wonderkids. There's a couple here that I've talked about in previous videos. Rome Jaden Owusu-Oduro is one of my favourite Wonderkid goalkeepers this year in Football Manager. He is an exceptional talent. He will set you back around £7 million. If you're looking for someone cheaper, well, it's going to be tricky because Van der Voort, who would have been a great option for you, has already agreed to join Leipzig in real life. So of all the 160 players, he's not one you can go for right away. The youngest Wonderkid goalkeeper with exceptional ability in Football Manager this year is Orestes. He is a French international in the making, 18 years old, has crazy pace for a young goalkeeper. If you're looking for a sweeper keeper, he could be the man for you. Starts his career at Toulouse playing in Ligue 1. There is a reasonable chance that Toulouse will get relegated in the first few years of a save game. Keep your eyes peeled for this guy. He will become available to buy for cheaper than this value we're seeing on screen at some point in your career. Noah Atubolu has some really good potential. Sadly, his current ability isn't all that, but at 21 years old, if you give him regular first team football, he has the chance to become one of those late bloomers. Just a reminder, in FM24, how players develop has changed slightly. I do feel like it affects goalkeepers more, but they tend to continue to improve way later into their 20s. With that in mind, and knowing this guy has some serious potential, for the price he might set you back, could be worth having your eye on him. Moving over into the left-back options, there's one player who everyone's going to want me to talk about. He was in my top 10 Wonderkids this year, Barco, available for £8 million as a release clause. I don't need to say much more. If you play Football Manager, if you've had your ear to the ground of Wonderkids, you've already heard about this bloke. Dedic of Salzburg is a really good versatile left-back option. He can also play right-back, which is always nice. Is actually naturally right-footed, but you could definitely play him on the left-hand side with his fairly strong left foot. Has great determination, really well-rounded physicals, available for a pretty cheap fee, and wage-wise, he's not going to ask for an arm or a leg either. If you want someone who might be able to step into your first team immediately, Truffert might be the left back for you. 21 years old, capped for the French national team, playing for Rennes only on £15,000 a week. With that in mind, he's very easy to lure away if you've got a wad of cash to offer him. Don't be deceived by the fact that he doesn't have a single attribute that's 16. He will do very quickly into his career. A super well-rounded player with only one mental below a 12. Yet for a player who's 21, has really good, well-rounded physicals, he could be the left-back solution for years in a save game. Moving over onto the right-hand side, we have Carmona playing for Getafe. This guy on loan from Sevilla year 1. Don't worry though, he will be available to sign, and don't be deceived by the fact that when you look at his current ability at 21, he maybe looks slightly unremarkable. He has some seriously good potential. If you can help him unlock it, you'll be able to get him for a really good fee. Elias Yellet is another fantastic option. He plays naturally out on the right-hand side, one of a couple of FC Copenhagen players that are particularly notable as Wonderkids this year in Football Manager. Like the look of this guy a lot. Definitely more of an offensive fullback, but keep your eye peeled for him. If you don't sign him right away, he will move to one of the big clubs sooner rather than later. On the slightly more expensive side of things, Coyote here of Fiorentina is amazing. 18 years old. I'll be honest, I've never heard of this bloke, but in Football Manager, he's set for greatness, so maybe keep your eyes peeled for him in a few years' time. One thing I've noticed with a lot of the players that feature in this shortlist in the fullback areas is they can play both sides to a reasonable ability. I feel like that's becoming a more of a necessity in modern football. Interesting to see it reflected in Football Manager. In terms of more expensive fullback options, if money is no object, Rico Lewis is a man you should keep your eyes open for. 18 years old, already capped for England's under-21s. Pep Guardiola's bigged him up massively in real life. Probably the best fullback under the age of 19 at the start of a Football Manager save game. He's incredible. Sadly, he does also play for Man City, so signing him is going to be difficult. Moving on over to the centre-back position, Jose Master at 21 years old may have the appearance of a wonderkid who hasn't got a chance to make it anymore, but let me tell you now, you treat this guy with love and care, you get him some regular first team minutes after you pick him up, he could be very, very good. Starts at FC Andorra in La Liga 2, phenomenal player, once upon a time at Barcelona. His potential from those days is still retained. Ibrahim Abambe made the move from Portugal over to Qatar in the last year, but at 21 years old, he has some mad potential. From my experience playing the game this year, he won't want to stick around in Qatar for long. He will come available at some point. When he does, keep your eyes peeled. Not the best centre-back when it comes to his aerial ability, but he has absolutely incredible pace, some really, really good mentals, a kind of player who's hungry to put in a tackle and brave to boot, and if you can pick him up, he can turn into a fantastic centre-back prospect. And for you big budget ballers out there, Diamande, if you've not seen this guy in Football Manager this year, you will see him pop up in your save games, I promise. He starts at Sporting, seen him play for some of the very best teams across the continent. He's absolutely incredible. When it comes to centre mids, there's not a load of super cheap options, but there's definitely some underrated prospects you can pick up for cheap. Amir Richardson, one such player. Starts his career at Rennes, very, very good in the air. A well-rounded centre mid, although definitely more tailored to the defensive side of his game. He doesn't have big wages, doesn't have a big asking price. Very, very attractive player. And I think another player who fits a similar mould to that is Eric Martel. I actually used this guy in Football Manager last year. He was immense for me then, actually as a centre-back. But as a centre mid and defensive mid, he can definitely do a job. Look at these mentals. For a player who is 21, these are absolutely ridiculous. Great stamina, great work rate, a terrier in the midfield. Technicals may be lacking slightly. Make no mistake, though, he can become immense. On the super expensive side of things, Warren Zaire-Emery of PSG. Yeah, this guy's absolutely immense as centre mid. Whether or not you'll ever have the chance to sign him from PSG remains to be seen. Look at his polygon. Look how well-rounded he is. He's just stupidly good. And one last centre mid on the younger side of things, Archie Gray starts at Leeds United, absolutely insane player. If you're managing in the Premier League and you have a lot of money, and this guy's still at Leeds United, try and pick him up. He can develop into one of the best well-rounded centre mids in the world of football. He's an amazing player, but because of how young he is as well, you really have a chance to develop him to any midfielder role that you want. Very well suited to a ton of them. Maybe lacks a tiny bit in the technicals, although they tend to be the attributes that improve the most. At 17 years old, one to have your eye on. Talked about defensive mids, let's talk about some players further up the pitch, starting with Wiedreago. This guy starts at Schalke, absolutely insane. I know his polygon maybe feels a tad underwhelming, but he's got really good determination, well-rounded physicals. He's actually a versatile player who can play a whole host of positions, and given his price, given his age, you should really have your eye on him. A player who people were very unhappy wasn't in my top 10 Wonderkids video is João Veloso. Now, the reason he wasn't in the list is because he's not guaranteed to fulfill his potential due to his lower current ability. That said, just because he's not in the top 10 Wonderkids doesn't mean he's not an amazing player. Great value for money, starts at Benfica, which might make him difficult to sign away, but in terms of creativity at an affordable price, you're not going to do better. I know a lot has been made of Noah Darvic in real life, a player who Barcelona really value highly. One of a couple of Barcelona players with absolutely ridiculous potential. Sadly, you're not really often going to be able to sign him, but be aware of him. He's pretty bloody good. And another player who fits the mould of bloody good, but probably difficult to sign, is Ethan Nwaneri. I hope I've said that name correctly. I'm sure this guy is a name that I'm going to hear a lot in the next few years. He's part of Arsenal's academy. He is Arsenal's best young prospect. Absolutely immense centre mid. You can see here, great speed, great technicals, maybe lacks a little in the mentals department, but given his potential, given his age, loads of time to fulfill what he's got, and if he does fulfill it, he's going to be absolutely insane. One thing I will say is there are lots of centre mids in this shortlist. I can't cover them all, as is the case with this kind of video, just showcasing some of the players that I have been particularly familiar with. Naturally, players like Bellingham, Pedri, Camavinga, Gavi, they are all in this shortlist. They are some of the best young players still. But yeah, I'm not talking about them a lot because you probably know who they are and they're never really going to sign for you. One player who will sign for you and was in my top 10 Wonderkids is Nipan. Amazing player, 16 years old, Norwegian. I've already done a whole video where I talk about how good this guy is and show how good he can be in the future. Go watch that video after this one. Now we're going to move over into the natural centre attacking mid players, starting with Wilfried Gnonto. Perhaps better known as a striking option, but as a centre attacking mid, still absolutely ridiculous. Kind of affordable, of course, was relegated with Leeds United last year. With that in mind, he is a player who you will be able to pry away from them, but in order to do that, you are going to have to pay quite a lot. Another young player based out of England to have your eye on is Mikey Moore. This guy has ridiculous potential. Some of the best potential in the game, but sadly, his current ability is not very good. And because of that, he will very rarely reach his potential. If you want to challenge yourself with youth development this year in Football Manager, I think trying to get Mikey fully developed could be the challenge. He's 15, really good outline of a player, but really has to just excel everywhere to look good enough to justify his inclusion on this list. I promise you he can do it. It's just a long road for him. Rodrigo Mora is another young Portuguese player worth having on your radar. Can play centre attacking mid naturally, can play out on the wing. Starts his career at Porto, reasonably affordable price. Lacks maybe a little bit in current ability like Mikey Moore does, but at the end of the day, these guys are 16 years old. They've got 5 years until you really got to worry about getting them in the first team. For the price that he's going to cost you, Rodrigo here, probably worth a punt. You know what, let's keep the Portuguese theme going. João Veloso, another player to have on your radar. Professional personality, good potential. At 18 years old, his current ability could maybe be a little bit better. Then again, he's extremely affordable, just like João Rego. Yeah, these are all different players I'm showing from Benfica and Porto, but they all have surprisingly similar molds. This guy is slightly more expensive, but on £3,000 a week at Benfica, he is someone you can perhaps pry away from them. And because of all the talent that the Portuguese clubs have, they are sometimes a little more willing to let these younger players go. If you want another player who was relegated in real life in recent years, look no further than Yasser Asprilla. This guy was relegated with Watford from the Premier League, slugged it out in the Championship last year, and in spite of that, did not get a move away in the summer. 19 years old, Colombian international, loads of potential, have him on your radar, probably worth the pennies you'll have to pay. And before we move out into the wider areas, this is a guy who I have to big up, I have to talk about. We have here Tommaso Baldanzi. This guy, Italian under-21 international, perfectionist personality. You can already see just looking at him what kind of player he is. At 20 years old, he plays for Empoli down in the lower echelons of Serie A. And he's a player who you should just be trying to sign. He can turn into an absolute superstar, someone who can act as the creative force in one of the best teams in world football, available for a great price. A player who I've not seen many people talk about. I had to talk about him in this one. Lamine Yamal has the highest potential in Football Manager this year, 15 years old. There's a reason I'm wearing a Spain shirt. This guy might be the reason why. I believe he does have a release clause in his contract. Yeah, 61 million. I think it might get cheaper when he signs his first senior deal. Don't quote me on that. Either way, you're probably not going to be able to sign him from Barcelona, but if you manage to, you're going to have some fun. Jonathan Rowe is another one of the players in the Championship that features in this list. A player who's seemingly come out of nowhere, but in Football Manager, they rate him highly. They've given him some good potential. Norwich have a knack for producing players through their academy. Maybe Rowe is another player to add to that list. Great dribbling, great pace. His determination is absolutely insane. He's been a bit of a breakout talent in real-world football. Maybe you can pick him up, and if you do, you won't regret it. He can definitely do a job in a Premier League side. Okay, right attacking mid options, a player that you're all familiar with. He just scored against Manchester United in real life. Rooney. I signed him in my Chelsea Let's Play, in my own playthrough. Absolutely crazy player, 17 years old, really good determination, super well-rounded player, can naturally play out on the right, but given his young age, you could definitely train him to play at centre attacking mid, out on the left-hand side on his stronger left foot, or maybe even as a more creative striking outlet. One thing to be aware of is he's not the most physically imposing, but what he lacks in physicality, he'll more than make up for in his technicals. I love it when there's players on this list that I feel like I should have heard of, and I didn't hear of them until I found them and added them, having found them in Football Manager. Lovumbo is one such player. He plays for Cagliari. He has some crazy pace, some crazy acceleration. He's got 7 caps for Angola. You can see here, he was signed by what was a Serie B outfit only a few years ago for £900,000, and yet now he finds himself at the newly promoted team with some crazy speed, some crazy technicals. His value maybe a little on the higher side, but keep an eye on things. If Cagliari get relegated, could come available for a good price. Buonani is an immense player, probably one of the best value for money attacking options in this list. Naturally, the good young attacking options cost a pretty penny more than some of their younger, more deeper counterparts in the defensive third, but this guy here is crazy. He plays for Nice. He may be difficult to pick up right away, but with a resolute personality, he's almost guaranteed to develop. He's only 18 years old. Keep your eyes peeled for him. He will pop up in your save games. When he does, I hope that you're the man who's already signed him, because if he's popping up against you, he will get goals. And finally, to wrap up this countdown, we're going to look at some strikers, starting with Karim Kanate. 19 years old, Ivorian international, starts at Salzburg. This guy is absolutely crazy. Get him if you can. His acceleration, his agility, his pace. Combine that with his determination and his perfectionist personality. Whilst his technicals maybe are slightly lacking, they will grow with him. He has the makings of an incredible forward. He's intelligent, but also pretty physical, and to be honest, he would probably be one of my picks of all the strikers in this list. If you're looking for a slightly more affordable option, Mohamed Ali Cho here may well be the player for you. For people who manage in England, don't worry, he's got part English nationality, so work permits aren't going to be a problem. At 19 years old, this guy was a player really tipped for greatness. I think he may have even got reduced in his current ability in the most recent year of Football Manager, but in spite of that, his potential remains. And with that in mind, for the price you might have to pay, if you can develop him, he could be an absolute bargain. The sad reality is when it comes to strikers, there's not many of them out there, and those that do exist are going to cost you a penny. Players like Wahi, I know, are really hotly tipped by a lot of people who follow French football, and with good reason. He is an amazing player, but for the price he's going to cost you, I do feel like there's better options out there. That said, the fact that he's contracted to Lens means that if they do struggle a little bit, if they do start to fall off, he might kick up a bit of a stink about wanting to move. Maybe then you can swoop in and get him for a slightly more reasonable price. I already talked about Nonto at Leeds. Another player who plays for Leeds with some potential is Rutter. This guy, French under-21 international, a player who's maybe fallen off a little bit. He is going to cost you more than Nonto to pick up. In spite of that, though, he does have some really, I said really lots of times, you know I'm serious, good potential if he can fulfill it. I feel like if you want to do kind of a building a team save with lots of homegrown talents that are already at the club, Leeds United, they've got Gray, they've got Nonto, they've got Rutter. Like, actually, the more I think about it, Leeds are just a fun team to manage. If you pick this guy up, I hope you get him for cheaper than that value, because 33 to 98 million, he's good. He isn't that good. Next up in this list, a player you've definitely not heard of, Benjamin Sesko. What do you mean everyone's heard of it? Okay. Apparently you've all heard of this guy already. He will also cost you a lot. We'll move on to the next one. Got it. Sorry, editing jack in my ear. If this guy has a last name that seems familiar, it's because he's related to some bloke called Robin. Yeah, Shaquille Van Persie, 16 years old, phenomenal player. During the beta, he kept declaring for the England national team. I believe they have now fixed it, so he will play more often for the Netherlands. You can see, looking at him, he is a very, very raw player, but with lots of potential to thrive. If he does develop, he develops amazingly. I will warn you, on the flip side, I've definitely seen save games where he gets nowhere near the level of his father. And that is a little bit of a rundown of this shortlist. Like I already mentioned, I'll have a link to download it down below. Hopefully this video was useful just for showing you a load of the best young players in Football Manager. Of course, nothing is better than getting the shortlist, but I do also appreciate some of you play on console, some of you play on handheld. There's players out there who don't have the means by which to import the shortlist. This video was kind of for you. If you are new to my channel, make sure to subscribe. If you want to check out more content and you've enjoyed this one all the way until the end, I recommend checking out my top 10 Wonderkids video in FM24. I'll put a link to it up here. Besides that, make sure to subscribe for more Football Manager content. I'll see you guys again on the next one. Until then, take things easy. It's me, Jack. I'll talk to you in a bit. I'm out.